Amidst President Obama's tour of Europe and Turkey in recent days, despite the main leitmotif of the kind of adulation of this new president and his first lady, there have been a couple of jarring images that have come out, I think, in a way that is important in contrasting those more frequent and certainly more prominent visions of the man and his policies, and juxtaposes them with hard reality. The first was a video that appeared on YouTube, apparently taken by a cell phone, of a woman, a young woman, 17 years old or so, being beaten in the Swat Valley of Pakistan by someone we're told was a Taliban commander. The Swat Valley, you probably know, is a part of the Northwest Territories of Pakistan that have been taken over by the Taliban. And recently that takeover was actually acknowledged and acquiesced in by the government of Pakistan as a deal to stop the bloodletting that the Taliban is inflicting on the Pakistani military by essentially giving them their way, allowing the Taliban to have not only control of the Swat Valley, but to explicitly to impose Sharia, the theopolitical legal program that authoritative Islam says everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, should be subjected to. That image of the young woman being severely beaten, pleading for the beating to stop, begging that the Taliban commander beat her another day just to stop at the moment, was so affecting for many people in Pakistan who saw it that they've begun questioning the judgment of their government in effectively surrendering, making a separate peace with the Taliban in that part of the country, knowing, as I suspect many of them do, that it signals the likely advent of what the Taliban or what other Islamists will insist be done nationwide, namely subjecting all of the Pakistani people to this brutal, totalitarian, and repressively misogynistic code. This is important because Secretary of Defense Robert Gates said a month or so ago on the margins of a NATO ministerial that he believed a deal similar to the one that the Pakistanis had struck with the Taliban for the Swat Valley could be a satisfactory end state for Afghanistan. And as we're listening to the administration talking about building up our troops there and trying to get the allies to put in more forces, civilian or ideally military, and to carry the fight much more effectively to the Taliban, it's hard to imagine a more counterproductive message to send. Not just to the Taliban, not just to Al-Qaeda, but to the people of Afghanistan. That we are prepared to subject them to this virulent form of Islam, the Sharia code in all of its barbarity. A second, and this is very important because, of course, the president keeps talking endlessly about the respect that he wishes to convey to the Muslim people. That respect is part and parcel of what Sharia requires all of us to exhibit. And just so there's no confusion on this point, the Organization of the Islamic Conference, a kind of international mafia organization of 57 of these Muslim nations around the world, has made it clear that they intend everyone to respect Islam according to Sharia by making it a criminal act of blasphemy to express anything remotely critical of Islam, of Muslims, or of Sharia. I submit to you that it is not in the interests of the United States to have our president signaling explicitly or implicitly that we are prepared to accommodate ourselves to Sharia. either of the Swat Valley variety or of the kind that the Muslim Brotherhood, a more insidious organization working inside the United States as well as elsewhere, is trying to insinuate in this country as it develops a kind of parallel society, first to dominate Muslims, even those who oppose Sharia, and those of the rest of us who have no more interest than the latter in being subjected to this barbarism and the code that authorizes it. The second jarring image, as the president was talking about ridding the world of nuclear weapons, and was in the business, both through his budget cuts and by undermining the NATO agreement to deploy anti-missile defenses in Poland and the Czech Republic, was the image of a ballistic missile being fired by the North Koreans over Japan and in the general direction of the United States, a missile that did not perform as the North Koreans assured us it would, as a launch vehicle for putting a satellite in space, but sure looks a lot like a ballistic missile aimed at reaching further and further in the direction of the United States. As Newt Gingrich, among others, has pointed out, what's particularly worrying is the North Koreans clearly understand, as do their allies in nuclear weapons development and ballistic missile test programs, the Iranians, that if they were able to put a nuclear weapon into space and detonate it over the United States, they could create an effect known as strategic electromagnetic pulse, with devastating consequences on our electrical grid and all of the electronic devices that depend on it. Which is to say, were the North Koreans to be able, or the Iranians for that matter, to undertake such an attack, they could render this country in literally the blink of an eye from a 21st century superpower to a pre-industrial society. We must not let that happen. We must deter any prospect of nuclear attack by maintaining a formidable, reliable, and credible nuclear deterrent. We must also maintain, in fact, we must expand as much as we can, the protection, the effectiveness of our missile defenses to deal with and to prevent the kind of attack that the Iranians and the North Koreans, among others, are increasingly capable of performing. These two images contrast with the kind of, if you will, noting the season, adoring reception that was so reminiscent of Christ and the palm fronds as he came into Jerusalem. We must be clear about the nature of the world as it is, not simply the world that Barack Obama would have us believe we're in or that he will get us to. Thanks for listening.